Hey, it's David Barron here. Welcome to The Process. Today, we're going to be talking about self-publishing, crowdfunding, as we watch me work over Tony Harris on a variant cover of Good Boy. As always, we have Mike with us, producer Mike, and our guest, Garrett Gunn.
What up?
Hey, how you doing, Garrett?
Good. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Where are you at right now?
I am at home in Michigan.
Michigan. I was trying to remember where it was, and it was Michigan. That's right. I have a couple friends in Michigan. And I will be at Detroit Comic Con, Motor City Comic Con, later this year. So that'll be really cool. Will you be at that show?
No, I have a conflicting thing with my kids.
So not even the show. With your kids, the family.
My kids, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. At least it's not another show or something like that.
No. Yeah, I know. That's always the first thing in the schedule is kids. Kids take first scheduled spot, and then it goes to shows and everything else.
Yeah, that is absolutely how it should be. It's a secret to life and happiness. Mike agrees on that one. He's a big man with a child on the way. Thank you, Mike, for fitting
congrats.
A busy schedule. So Garrett, let's talk about you first. Let's introduce you to the audience. Tell me about your background in comics, where you started, what years, if you can, what projects, what publishers, if there was independent, not, however you want to start it, kick it off. Where are you from?
So I'm originally from Northern California, born and raised. I was born in Southern California and then raised most of my life in Northern California. And I spent most of my adult time in the military. And in 2011, 2012, I deployed. And when I came back, I was medically retired from the military for injuries I got during deployment. And when I got out, I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had no idea. I had no plans, no anything, because I would plan to be a career military guy. My father was a vet. My grandfather was a vet. And so the only thing I had done is I had, as a hobby, written and drawn comics for myself, just as a way of, passing time. And my ex-wife at the time had been like, hey, you should at least do something with one of these just to say you did one. And I was like, why? Why? There's no reason. And she's like, just do it. So I made one. Okay. Some random publisher called Insane Comics, they were a super small indie publisher in 2013, was like, we'll publish that. And I was like, okay, cool. And they did. And then immediately they were like, they went and they sold it and they put it out. And then they were like, when's number 2 come? And I was like, oh no, I didn't plan for this. This is not I'll be back. Right. So I went and wrote number 2, and then I did number 3 and number 4. And I just fell in love with it. It really kept my brain busy in a time where I really should not be spending a lot of time inside my own head. And it just became my obsession and a crazy hobby. And then it became a job. It very quickly was oh, I can make money doing this. I can do this full time. And was that in 2013 or 14? 13, 14. Really, I started doing professional comics in 2015. Okay. That's the first time that I actually was oh, I'm sustaining some income from this. So this year is my 10-year anniversary of I've been making comics.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. It's pretty crazy because it feels like yesterday. Yeah. So I went to work. I published some stuff through a company called Source Point Press. And then, a number of other small publishers, Alterna Comics, and, a slew of other small time press that aren't around anymore. But it just really I just fell in love with making comics. I could not stop making comics. And I spent the next 10 years doing something 90 books, something like that.
Right. That's a books right there. Yeah.
It's a lot.
And just kind of keeps going and going. And this is why I thought when I was going to have you on, when you asked me to color this cover for your campaign, your next series, I thought, you'd be perfect for the show because so much of what you've done has been a mixture of self-publishing or working with smaller independent publishers, and which is almost the same thing. It's almost like they are self-publishing themselves. It's just, you know, it has a little bit more of a business structure to it than maybe what we do on our own. So I thought, you know, you would be perfect. I think kind of the first question I want to talk with you about, first kind of topic, is what roles do you take on the creative team for your self-publishing, and then how do you build out the rest of your creative team? Because I know how I do it, and I want to know a little bit how you do it.
And listen, it used to be that I did as much as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I got to do everything. I want to control everything. I want to do. No one's touching my stuff.
So what was that? So like, let's go down. So your first writing, of course.
Yeah, writing, and then it was like storyboarding stuff. You know,
you got your panel storyboard out.
Rough, because I'm a writer first, a very lowly artist, but. Writer first, but I mean storyboarding stuff. I mean, even placement of like where I want letters,
which is a real thing. I mean, editors, you know, do word balloon placements. Yeah, balloon placements are something that a lot of editors do. A lot of letters, you know, especially at DC and things like that to happen, just so they don't have to, you know, deal with it a lot. The writer kind of puts, you know, where they want it. Some letters just let me do my thing. Okay, so but you did word balloon placements, but never lettering.
No.
Okay. And then
and then I would edit my own stuff.
Okay.
And then I mean, going back and doing like art direction, like after the fact, after art came in.
Your project makes sense.
Yep. Color direction. I flatted some stuff in the beginning before I even really knew the proper way to flat colors.
Yeah, you're probably a nightmare to me on that one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's awful. Like I was doing it on like when I first got an iPad, I was doing it like on very early Procreate.
Yeah, that sounds horrific.
It was terrible. But it was a way for me to save, you know, $5 a page to get you know, things done. And when you're penny pinching, you know, stuff to make it yourself.
That is the key, right? To penny pinch as a self-publisher. So anyone who's trying to make their own book, a lot of you are out there paying way over market value. And a lot of times when people hire me for an independent project, I actually charge a bit more because of the headache it comes with it in experience. So it's a lot of times does take more time to work on an independent project overall than a DC project because of the way that the workflow at DC Comics is. Yeah. And so everyone that's watching this, you know, keep in mind though, how much money you're working in and where you could penny pinch. So you have your roles of what you're doing. How do you find your artists? What are you looking for all the writers out there? Because if you're an artist, it's much easier to find a writer. But if you're a writer finding an artist, how are you finding them? What's your number one way to approach and find an artist for your book?
You know, when I started, it was, you know, I tell people like it was literally Facebook groups. It was those like connecting writers and artists Facebook groups, right? Where you would go through and you find someone that's like, I need work. Here's 40 samples of my stuff. You know, and you can see in the comments, people are just like, me, like people fighting over like trying to hire the people. Yeah. And that was in the beginning, like, but when I'm a creature of habit, and I love when I fall in love with an art style or an artist, or even like working with a person, because to me, the greatest thing about comics is I always wanted a bullpen. Like that is a thing none of us will have because the digital world
Mark Miller has that. Mark Miller gets whatever he wants.
Of course.
You know,
but most of us, right? The digital world has erased the idea of a bullpen. Right. Yeah. And so when you get to work with somebody that you feel so like in sync with, like on a creative level, and like I don't want to let them go. And so I've found over the years, you know, 4 or 5 artists that like I get with them, and then I do so many things with them. Right. So you know, a lot of my stuff has similar artists, similar styles, whatever.
Yeah, but I found that like when an editor, mostly editors, and there's some writers that says, you know, you'll see on X or you'll see on, you know, Instagram or Facebook, hey, I have a paid gig coming, you know, and show me your portfolio. Yeah, I always find that really lazy. Joining a Facebook group or a group that, you know, showcases where you're just constantly seeing art and something catching your I kind of like that. But when you're asking for the floodgates to open, and then that to me is really throwing, just a dart at a, ocean, more than, really understanding what the project is. I was art directing the World of Warcraft with Cryptozoic Entertainment for Blizzard. And I hired, at that job, I hired over 1,000 artists, but it's never just this wild chase. And I learned it quick that you just don't randomly find people. You have to really say, that person, I like their art for this project. And you keep them in that bullpen. But you're right. As soon as you work with them once and it's a good experience, usually it goes back. So if you're an artist looking to break in, a lot of it is just being a really cool person and getting along with other creatives.
I have so many times chosen to work with an artist that is, to some people, less talented because they could beat deadlines. They were affordable. They were easy to work with, and I liked them.
Is that why you hired me?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there, right?
You're so great. It's that smile, like it's you're just so
nothing to do with talent. It's
I don't care about the colors. You're just so charming.
Yeah.
There's tons of people that are so incredibly talented, and you work with them, and they're just awful.
Yeah, you never want to work with them again.
And you just end up like, I don't care, dude. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So you drew Superman once. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely in comics. It's such a small network. As we tell people in shows or in panels, when they ask about breaking in, we always talk about how, there's more people on the Dallas Cowboys staff than there are truly professional comic book, creators. And so it's easier to be on the Dallas Cowboys staff, whether you're playing or doing some front office thing, than it is to be at DC and Marvel.
Yeah.
So, we are talking about self-publishing. We touched, already 12 minutes in of, talking about, kind of how we create those things or how we find those people. But in reality, that's the easy part. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the easy part. The hard part is funding. We talk about penny pinching, funding, printing, and marketing. And so that's kind of what I want to get to for the bulk of what we're talking about. Crowdfunding. There is Kickstarter. There's Zoop. There's Indiegogo. There is literally GoFundMe. And then just, being at a show, trying to, raise that capital to create what you want to create.
Yeah.
How big to you is crowdfunding nowadays in the self-publishing world?
70% of the market.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's almost without crowdfunding, independent comics nowadays really don't exist anymore, does it?
No. Yeah. Crowdfunding has really transitioned away from this idea of, oh, please help me, I'm a lowly person who needs help making a thing, to a pre-order platform as a intimate connection between a creator and a fan, or a creator and a reader, to order a special thing before anyone else. Right. And that is the heart of collecting, is what everybody wants. They want to feel special. They want to feel like they have something before the rest of the collecting community. So that connection is very special for so many people. And so when you're making a comic and you've got 500 people out of the thousands and thousands that read comics who are like, I got a #1 of this thing that no one else has, that, later goes on to be X, Y, and Z. It's very special.
So when you're looking to crowdfund, how do you choose what platform? I'm talking to you. I'm talking about, how are you deciding Zoop or Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or a combination of them? How do you go by that? How could you help someone decide for themselves what they should or should not do?
I've never used Zoop. I have friends who have used it, who've had very limited success. I've heard that it's a hard system to run on. That it's very new, right? Compared to Kickstarter's been around so long that they've really worked out most of the bugs out of everything. So I can't really speak too much to Zoop, but I know that I tried Indiegogo one time, and it was nightmare fuel. Like, it was just, the community on Indiegogo is really toxic.
Okay.
There's a lot less like quality control by the company and stuff. I mean, Kickstarter also tells you, right, like, this is a risk. You're giving your money to this thing that could not happen. But Indiegogo is like the Wild West.
Okay.
Like, wild stuff happens, and there's just blatant scams and very little oversight.
For the record, for everyone watching, for me, because we'll talk about my crowdfunding a little bit as well. I have worked with Zoop. I was a part of their very first project, Slow
nice.
City Blues. So their launch book that they did.
Oh yeah.
When they were new, I have had friends be very successful on Zoop, but it is a different platform. You're absolutely right.
Did you cover for that?
Say it again.
Didn't Mankey do a cover for that? Did you color that?
Oh yeah, that Mankey cover is amazing.
I've seen that. It's amazing. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite pieces with him. It's a great cover, and we'll probably throw that up on an overlay, Mike, later, so people can see that. We have on Kickstarter again. That's where all my personal crowdfunding has been. We'll talk about that when we get a little bit more detail. And then Indiegogo also, I've never been a part of. I've had friends that have tried to get me where they have had way positive more experiences than Kickstarter and other ones. So I think what I hear from Garrett and from me, what you have to kind of choose what works for you, because you can find one platform a waste of time or toxic that doesn't take you away from crowdfunding, I think is what I want to kind of encourage people on. Don't be so scared of it. I have a lot of high-end Eisner Award winning pros that don't want to do crowdfunding. They're scared of it. And I kind of send those guys to Zoop, because Zoop is a lot more of a, they'll handle everything for you type of go.
Feels more boutique too.
Yeah, like, absolutely. Yeah. And I think those are the ones that have the most success on it, where Indiegogo, as you said, the Wild West, I agree with you on that one. It seems a lot more free. And then Kickstarter is a lot more corporate, yet it still has all that creative. You probably get more of the higher end projects, more of the professional projects. So I get that. Now, what would be the reason, though, for you to kickstart over going and shopping around? Or do you always shop a project around before you kickstart? Like, how's your thinking on that?
So after having the experience of working at publishers, I mean, so I was the chief branding officer at SourcePoint Press for years. And after having been published by a number of different publishers, it's very hard when you get to, this industry is chiseled down so far of, like, if you're not being published by Marvel or DC or, one of the big ones, right? When you get into the smaller bracket of publishers, the community and the funds available are so chiseled down, and the margins are so chiseled down, that for me to sell, if I sell 20,000, I mean, I'll just say, one of my greatest selling books of all time was a book called Go West. It was put out by Alterna Comics. I sold 15,000 units of #1 in 2018. To me, at the time, I lost my mind. I was like, 15,000 units of #1? That was insane. I couldn't fathom it. And when I got that royalty check and it was like $2,000, that hurt. That was, because by the time you had the distributor's cut and the publisher's cut and the cost to print the book and the cost to this and like everything, I was making so little per unit that I was like, holy smokes. Alternatively, I can sell 250 books directly to people on Kickstarter and make $6,000.
Right. And then you got your shows later where you get all of it. And you own all the rights. That's the other part, is that
it just becomes a money game. Like, I like to pay my bills. Yeah. Like, that's really all it is.
At the time, as we talked about, all these small publishers are relatively self-publishers for other people's properties. And a lot of them try to take part of the rights, because they think, they're building this IP portfolio. And you're taking rights, and then if it does hit, was it really worth you giving part or most of your rights away instead of just self-publishing? Because the units could be the same overall. It might take more time. They might have a ability to sell 15,000 units right away, but overall you have more, time to sell those same amount of units, the same amount of people, if you're willing to travel, if you're willing to sell, because that's part of that thing. Before we get to that part though, I want to ask you if you have any crowdfunding tips when you're setting up. What makes you have success when you have your crowdfunding tips? And then on top of that, have you had any crowdfunding that failed?
I have not had one. I haven't had one that's failed.
Okay.
I've never had one that didn't hit the mark. I've had close calls.
Okay.
I've had, my very first Kickstarter, I think my goal was like $3,000. And I think I called my parents like the last day and was like, please God, please put it over, because I'm not going to make it.
My parents have done this is my Kickstarter here. My parents, that's why I put that banner behind me today. My parents, my brothers, everything. It's a family Kickstarting for all the fans out there. And you're thinking like, we'll talk about this in a second about like paying $10 for a $5 book. It's kind of like one of those things where it's well needed, and we'll hopefully explain a little bit of why. But give me that one tip though that got you over. Like, what do you think makes the fans happy to support your, besides being a good book, besides being well done and written and printed and trustworthy? What's the one thing that's eye-catching to bring new people in that may not know, Garrett Gunn's work, but still bought something?
Always prioritize the happiness of the backer.
Okay.
That is the biggest thing. So many people are focused on the margins or focused on, whatever. If you make sure that every single backer is happy, they will continue to back every single thing you make. I mean, I've done something like 24 Kickstarters or something like that. I've raised like $800,000 on Kickstarter.
Wow.
I have people that have backed every single one from the very beginning. And
you find that your crowd has gone.
It grows. Every single campaign, it grows. Now, not everybody backs everything, right? Because some projects aren't for everybody. Some people don't like a certain book or whatever.
But you can't take offense to that or worry.
But every single time, the feedback I get is that if somebody messages you and they're not happy with something, I'll send them another one. I'll do this. I'll send them extra stuff, whatever. Because at the end of the day, the extra $3 that cost me to print the book, or the extra, stickers, or the extra whatever, to make sure that person got a great experience.
And we'll talk about that too, because you brought something out about the extra cost, to you, because that's part of the mindset that you have to have going into Kickstarter. Mike, hop in here real quick. So as a fan, and I know that you said to me privately that your Kickstarter experience isn't robust, but you've been in a couple Kickstarters. As a fan, what are you looking for from us in a project? Like, what made you do those two projects or multiple projects that you backed, and what kind of kept you away from doing more?
Mainly, I knew people. I was supporting, people that are doing their own independent projects. A lot of times, the first question, what do I look for? What do fans look for? I think exclusive stuff that other fans can't get, rare stuff, new covers, prints, just things that can make that experience better. Like, for example, a lot of creators start off Kickstarter and then they'll use Dark Horse or Image to mass produce that same thing, right? So the people that backed them in the beginning, they feel like they got it in. And so whatever goodies they got from that campaign, I think that's what they're looking for.
It's like when I was a kid and I got the Ashcan books, the little printed off, at Kinko's type of books, Wetworks number 0, number 1, in Ashcan form, Youngblood, Ashcan, all of them, Wildcats. I have them all because that was the prime of Ashcans. And then what keeps you away, Mike? What keeps you away, briefly?
I'm just old school, man. So like I go to the LCS to get my comics. Like I barely even get Marvel. Like I get Image stuff. So I'm more of a niche guy. So I'm kind of like the wrong guy to ask. Even if DC did Kickstarter stuff, I think Jorge Jimenez got like an art book out. I got the comics, so I got where it came from. So I'm kind of
have all his artwork already, type of thing.
Yeah, but mainly for me though, I like to I like to support independent artists. So people that I think that are talented, that really have that passion and that drive, I'll just do it off of that. And a lot of times it ends up being good, and I end up being pleasantly surprised.
So we're close to the end. As you see the final image, of the Good Boy cover.
So good.
I want to talk a little bit about printing before we talk about this cover. Any advice? I'm not even going to chime in on this one. 30 seconds to 60 seconds advice on how to print your self-published comic.
Man, get multiple quotes. Like, never just print with people. Like, I have gone through so many people that are like, I'll give you such a good price on things. And you find out later, like, what? You're paying exorbitant prices on things. I almost never use a printer that has a website where you build it through their website. Right. Because if they're doing that, that means they're overcharging you for all that stuff. Almost every printer I used starting out was somebody that was printing it either in a small office or using like a Facebook page to take orders or something like that. You're always going to get the best pricing. But otherwise, if you can do it, if you want enough books, printing overseas is always the way to do it. Offset printing is so much better.
And I know everyone right now is going to be like, well, what about the tariffs? And I actually just got an email. Yes, I was about to say, I just got an email explaining that books are exempt from the tariffs. So it helps out. Obviously, if you're someone who's trying to do 3D toys, which I'm going to talk to you offline about your vinyl, because I've always wanted to make one of these guys there. So the tariffs is not a big thing. So quotes, and then and shopping around, which is the biggest thing. And then real quickly, because again, we could talk forever, but selling through marketing, hand selling books versus calling a store. Majority of your sales on your creator-owned books after Kickstarter, how are you selling them? Do you get to go through stores? At shows. Okay.
I love comic shops. I've shopped at comic shops my entire life, and I still do. I have never once had any success calling a comic shop being like, I'm Garrett Gunn. Let me tell you about my comic. Will you please carry it in your store? Like, comic shops don't have time to do any of that. They will always tell you, email us or mail us something, and we'll look it over.
Okay.
What I will always do, if you want to get into a comic shop, I will either go in with my product and say, I want to give you this for free. Please just put it up on your shelf. And if people like it, here's a card on how you can order more. That's it.
And to be completely honest, I've seen you do that at one of the shows we were at. You absolutely said the rest of my stock is going to this local comic store.
Because that's going to do one of two things. Either A, you're going to get more sales from that comic shop, or two, you're not going to get any more sales, but somebody in that shop is potentially going to be a new reader. Right. And they're going to find your stuff.
You're supporting that industry. You're supporting your industry by helping that shop make a couple bucks.
Exactly.
Guys, don't fool yourself. I've never met minus less than a handful my whole career, wealthy shop owners. And usually they're wealthy because they were wealthy before they became shop owners, not because.
Yeah, exactly.
Even their shop is doing well, they were always brought in capital. Let's, because we're somewhat out of time, let's switch this cover. So tell me about how you got Tony to do this cover. Tell me about the idea about it, and then what it's for.
So really it was like a pure coincidence. We had done, my buddy Jeremy Clark, who's an inker, we had done a bunch of covers together, like through artists he's worked with. And every Good Boy Kickstarter that we've done, we've always tried to have like a heavy hitter artist on it, like someone who is a legend in the industry, someone who's really cool, someone we like working with. We've had, Simon Bisley, we had Bill Sienkiewicz. And when we went to do this one, we were like, who do we want to get? And Jeremy was like, dude, I'm doing all these DC books, all these DC covers with Tony Harris. If you want, I can talk to him about doing a Good Boy cover. So he sent him the book. Tony thought it was awesome and just came back and was like, what do you want me to draw? And I was like, you can literally draw whatever you want.
Okay.
Like I am probably the worst art director ever, because I'm also a fan, right? Like, and I love, like, do whatever you want. I'm hiring you because I like your stuff. I know you're not going to turn in something that sucks. So like, do it like with you. All I barely gave you direction. Like I was like, color it. If you can find a way to do like a color pop, that'd be dope. Like that was it. Like
I've known Tony, not personally, but I've been lucky enough to be part of his work, since Wildstorm days and America's Best Comics and all those different things, or, in the Wildstorm and stuff like that. I guess it's more Wildstorm, not America's Best Comics. And I've always been a fan of some of the palettes that, his work shined under. And so that's kind of where that background. I have people that are watching the video. I think you saw there were several different choices that I had in the background, and some of them were really cool, and I did enjoy them, but I just didn't feel like it was Tony Harris enough. And
so I love that blue. That blue really just
it's a green. It's a green and that muted, orange, that I really enjoy. And so it's really cool that way. And now give me the elevator pitch for Good Boy. And talk a little bit about the upcoming Kickstarter. Now, when this video comes out, the Kickstarter should be live. We'll have all the information in there. If the Kickstarter is over, and because you're coming to this video way later, we'll have all the backing, the backer information on the back to still find it. But go ahead and give the audience the elevator pitch for Good Boy.
Yeah, so Good Boy is reverse John Wick. The human dies and the dog kills everybody. It is a action comedy set in a world where humans and animals are partners, and they are mercenaries. John and Flint have decided to retire from the industry they're in and just want to live a quiet, peaceful retirement. But some of their former colleagues don't want to let them have that. So they unfortunately make the mistake of killing John, and now Flint Sparks is going to make them pay for it.
And what volume Good Boy is this?
This is so the Kickstarter that we're running that this is going to be on is Volume 4, Number 3. So we've Volume 4 is called The Red Moon Over Kyoto. So in John Wick, anyone who's familiar with John Wick knows about the impossible task, right? And the thing that John Wick had to do to retire. So our impossible task that they had to do is what this volume is about. They had to travel to Japan. And so that's what takes place during volume 4, Number 3. You get to see all kinds of crazy.
And I'm sure if you're going to the Kickstarter, they'll have all your past books available as well, whether it's digital copies or
every single past book. We have an omnibus that collects volumes 1 through 3, and then we print what's called legacy variants, which is special variants of every past issue of the book in case you want to catch up.
That's great. I highly recommend it to everybody. I've read it, and I've always enjoyed it. I read it when you handed me a book yourself at that show where we met in Utah, and then back at the Nerd Store. If you're ever in Utah, definitely look up the Nerd Store. Great owners that love comics and love and take care of their customers.
Oh yeah, Krause Brothers.
Any final words from you, Garrett? Mike, you can come on in here for these final words, but Garrett, any final words from you about publishing? Any just final last clip that you want to leave the audience?
I will tell people, for years I spent all my energy trying to make the comic that I thought people wanted to buy, and I finally decided to make the comic I wanted to make, and that's when people started buying it. So stop trying to make a thing you think people want to buy and make the thing you want to make. People will see that passion in you making it, and it's infectious. People will buy it because they will feel that energy you're putting into it.
Yeah, and I ever since I met you, I felt your energy, and it definitely makes you want to see what the work's about, and you can hear your voice in the books, which is great. And
good.
Yeah, just creating something is so key in self-publishing. Without you can have all the publishing and printing things set up. If you don't actually write it or work, finish the project, it's never coming out anyway.
Yeah.
Mike, final words from you, my friend?
As always, keep watching the process. Subscribe to the Sig Slayers Station.
Awesome. Guys, that's thank you, Garrett, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, man.
Appreciate you. For everyone that is watching, again, please like and subscribe. It's a huge help to the show. But even more so, I'm looking for those comments. I want to know who you would like me to interview, what topics you would like me to discuss. The whole idea of the show, again, is pro to pro. I'm going to bring on another professional that I feel has a good understanding of a certain topic, just like Garrett with self-publishing. and we're going to just talk for a half hour, about it. If you want it longer, like Mike keeps trying to get me to do, you let me know, and we can talk a little bit longer. But I definitely like a tight 30. But again, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the cover. This was super fun to work on, and I hope to see you guys next month. Thank you.
Sig Slayers.